this as a player on the same team. But last week, we were on the show last week, and we went back 15 years. And, of course, Donovan shot out a couple of messages as far as a video, and you guys are kind of going back and forth. And I kind of went through it. But tell us your experience as far as your thought process after seeing what Donovan said in this video, and then you guys going back and forth last week.
I didn't really know what to think of it. Everyone started texting me about the video and the untold stories bit and the clip. And so for me, as you said, it took everybody back 15 plus years, and I didn't know where it came from. But I just didn't like the part to say that I prevented us or you guys from going to a second Super Bowl when the year before, leading up to the Super Bowl, he said he didn't need me. So, you know, you went through it. You saw what was going on in the locker room. And so at the end of the day, I'm secure in who I am and the character and what I presented in that locker room. All the speculation as to what went on, but you saw it yourself. You know that I was a good teammate. And so that's what I hang my hat on versus, you know how Donovan can be. He can be one way in front of the camera, and off the camera, he's a different guy.
What was the thing, you know, and I think we went through a couple of different things trying to get you guys together and, you know, dinners. We always have dinner on Saturday night. What was the big outlying factor in your mind as to why you guys couldn't get back together and kind of mend the relationship? Because we see teams now, you have to have a running back. We had a running back in myself that was okay. We had a quarterback that was great and a wide receiver that is great, Hall of Famer, and yourself. What was the thing that didn't allow you guys to get back together at the end of the 2004 season going into 2005?
Well, it was a couple of things. I think throughout the course of the season, I think when I first got there, you saw how the city embraced me. I think he still had some resentment at the fact that when he got drafted, Ricky Williams there, everybody wanted Ricky Williams. It wasn't that same embracement. And so when I got there, it was the stadium, T.O., T.O., T.O. Every week it was something about me, and I think it's almost like I took some of his shine away. That wasn't what I was brought there to do. I was brought there to do it ultimately what we went to do, and that was get to the Super Bowl. There was a lot of things that people brought to my attention that, like I said, unbeknownst to me, I was just, I guess, oblivious to. Again, like I said, whether he was jealous or whatever the case may have been, I didn't know any of these things because they were brought to me. I just came in there to do what they brought me there to do, to help you guys get past the 4 NFC championship games that you had gotten to prior and try to help them do what I could to get to the Super Bowl.
One more on this before we move on. It's now been 15 years, right? And I know in your defense, you didn't bring this up. You're right. You didn't. And so sometimes, and I've told you this, sometimes you get criticized fairly. Sometimes you get criticized unfairly. This was one, you didn't make this the conversation. Right. But since it's been 15 years, and Donovan said his piece, you've said your piece, Brian seems to be a willing moderator. If you guys could all sit down and bury the hatchet, and so when you guys have a reunion, there's none of that uneasiness, would that be something you'd want to do?
Well, I think, as he said, he mentioned like some of the things that happened or transpired during the course of that season. There was, like I said, there was an incident in the huddle where, I just came back to the huddle. We ran a play all during the course of the week. He missed me. He didn't throw the ball, and I told him I was open. And he cursed me out. And I'd never been cursed out by a teammate before. I mean, to the point like my grandmother, nobody would want to be cursed out like that. And so from that standpoint, I felt like I was disrespected to the nth degree. I addressed the issue after the game, man to man, and then from that point on, we just kind of went our separate ways. But at this point in time, like I said, I can forgive, but I never forget. You always kind of know how people make you feel, and all this time when I was there in Philadelphia and when I left, everybody thought that I was still the problem. I was always the problem in the locker room, and it just basically compounded from one team to another. Anything little, minute that happened, I was blamed. I was the scapegoat.
All right, let's take a turn and talk some Super Bowl. The game obviously means a ton to so many of the players, but we've been focusing a lot this week on Andy Reid, a guy you played for.
Absolutely.
And how, man, when we hear all these players talk in that Kansas City Chiefs locker room, it means a lot to me, but it would mean so much to Andy Reid. Right. We want to win this for him. How special is the moment to get back here for him, and how important would this win be for him?
Awesome. I mean, I had one of the best times of my career playing with the Philadelphia Eagles. I marveled at the opportunity to play with guys like Westbrook, Donovan, knowing what they had on the defensive side of the ball with Trotter, Brian Dawkins, Lito Shepherd. When I went to the Philadelphia Eagles, I knew that we had an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl. When you think about the cerebral mind, the offensive mind of Andy Reid, he utilized weapons like myself, Westbrook to the best of our abilities. And when you think about going into this game, he's going to be prepared. Whether they win or not, that remains to be seen.
Brian's told us a little bit from his perspective on one yours. Why do players love Andy Reid so much? Like, he gets criticized in the media for different things, but his players, to a man, former or current, seem to love him. Why?
And you know, you can say he's a player's coach. He is. But he earns and he demands respect. It's a mutual thing. You're gonna get whatever you see from Andy, you want to return it. And so it's like that reciprocity. And so for me, it was just like I knew what I was getting when I got there. He was straight up when I went into the meeting. When I talked to him on the phone prior to getting there, he's a no holds barred type of guy, no nonsense type of guy. And so for me, I went in there and I wanted to just play lights out. And I think anybody that plays with him, they understand that and they want to give their all.
So you know Andy's offense better than anyone. I mean, he's a true student of the game. I'm talking about knew every position down to a T, can tell everybody what to do. But now they're facing a defense, that they haven't faced all season long. A great pass rush, also a very good secondary. What would you do if you're on the offensive side with the Kansas City Chiefs versus this defense to try to have some success?
You know what he's going to do. I saw you do it all the time. He's going to, with that defensive front, that pass rush and how fast they get up the field, he's going to probably screen them to death. They're going to try to keep him honest. But who knows? You know, Andy's always going to throw some wrinkles somewhere during in the game. And I saw a headline where and that's how it was when we played. We felt like every play that was called, we could score anywhere on the field. And that's how I felt. He made me feel like a superhuman when I was out there playing football. And with the abilities that I had, being able to play in the West Coast type of offense, moving around multiple positions, going across the motion, stationary, outside, inside. I mean, genius, offensive genius.
You guys have both mentioned, we've talked all week, the San Francisco defensive front against the Chiefs offensive line, the pass rush against the passing attack. We've spent so much time on that, I feel like we've left out or not discussed enough a really interesting matchup, which is, I believe, future Hall of Fame corner Richard Sherman and the fastest player maybe
Tyreek
in
Hill.
league history. Now, I understand that they don't play, man-to-man cat coverage. They play a cover 3 zone typically, but can't really play zone against the Chiefs. There probably is going to be some instances where they're forced to break tendencies, play man. If Sherm gets lined up on Tyreek Hill, who do you think has the edge in that matchup?
Tyreek Hill. Speed kills. This is something, I don't know if this is something that Richard Sherman has prepared for, but I think ideally he knows that he has a tough task at hand. Will he be ready and accept that challenge? Absolutely. But it's not going to be a mano-a-mano type of thing. Robert Saleh, just like the Chiefs are preparing.
Let me just follow up on that. As a receiver, if you are playing the type of defense the Niners typically play, the same similar to Seattle, that cover 3 zone, what are the things it takes away from you as a receiver, and what are the things you can take advantage of with it? Because that's going to be the Chiefs' plan of attack.
Well, I think just stretching the field. Again, I think if I'm Andy Reid and I know Andy Reid, he's gonna go at Richard Sherman. He's not gonna be afraid to go at him. If you want man-to-man coverage, and I think if Richard Sherman welcomes that, then he's gonna have to be ready for that task, and he's gonna have a tall task in Tyreek Hill, because that speed that he has and his ability to make plays, cut on a dime, and you saw last week one big play on Richard Sherman, but you saw it was a little struggle there. So if there's something that they see that they can take advantage of, then they may well do that.
Look, despite that speed and despite that high-powered offense that Andy Reid is running there, Patrick Mahomes is running there in Kansas City, we know that defense wins championships. Is this the exception, though, when you see how good that offense has been in Kansas City this game?
Yes and no. But again, I'm a firm believer in defense wins championships. This is not a game that we're going to see Jimmy Garoppolo throw 8 passes. I'm assuring that. But Kansas City, when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, he's a special guy. He reminds, like I said, we talked about Donovan. I mean, he's a special guy. Donovan moved out of the pocket, makes some things happen with his feet and his arms. Patrick Mahomes is that guy.
to you, Joe. You talked about Jimmy G, and I think if you're the Chiefs, you want to turn it into a quarterback conversation, Mahomes versus Jimmy G. What's your confidence level in what Jimmy G can do if the Chiefs find a way to stop the run? Can Jimmy G win this game with his arm? And of course, he only threw 8 passes in the last game.
Well, I mean, very pedestrian by him, but if you look at how the Baltimore Ravens won some years ago, they didn't have a great quarterback, you know, when they had Trent Dilfer, but that defensive front, that defensive linebacker and Ray Lewis, they won that game. But this is not something that's going to be eerily similar. Jimmy G, this is going to have to be a statement game. We're going to have to see something out of Jimmy G that everybody's been expecting that we haven't seen as of late.
The last time you and I spoke, to take a quick turn from the Super Bowl, you called my radio show about Jason Garrett. Remember?
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys. He's obviously no longer the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Your thoughts on what that offense, Dak and Zeke, assume Amari's back, will look like under Mike McCarthy, potential improvements, because I know you weren't necessarily inspired by what they were doing under Jason.
I think the team as a whole will be inspired just by the hiring and just a newness, a fresh face. But if you think about what the resume in which Mike McCarthy is coming with, he's won Super Bowl. He's had the makeup of what he has there with the Dallas Cowboys now. You think about Dak, Zeke, and the pieces that they have on defense. They have a chance. I mean, it's one thing to have it on paper, but you got to produce and you got to play with it.
Tio, we want to tell our audience what you've been working on. You've been keeping busy with a clothing line. You also have a podcast. Tell us where we can find that, listen to your podcast.
On Himalaya app or wherever you get your podcast. A good friend of mine, Matthew Hatchett, who played for the Vikings for a number of years and the Jets. We have a podcast called Get Your Popcorn Ready with Tio and Hatch. And yeah, I have a clothing line coming out. It's called Prototype 81. And can't leave here without mentioning Kobe Bryant. You talk about desire, dedication, and discipline, and he's made an impact across the world. That's what my clothing line embodies.